Once upon a time, football was only for lads and angry men in pubs, but now it's for like... Football fans are gaining a new type of fan, and it's one that sits in quite stark contrast to the stereotypes of those fandoms. The sport has always had a strong presence on social media, especially the behemoth that is football Twitter, but now those same social media platforms are enabling a new influence to come into play. Stan culture. Stan culture has been with us in its most recognisable form for the best part of a decade and has been the subject of a vast amount of research and cultural analysis. Millions of people participate in it, and it's become a cultural touchstone of millennials and Gen Z. While it does have negative aspects, especially with its promotion of parasocial relationships and the toxic behaviours that it can end up spreading within fandoms, there is a lot of positivity to come from being a stan, so long as you're not too obnoxious about it. To clarify, being a fan of something might mean engaging with that thing in traditional ways, which for football typically means watching matches or listening to them on the radio, engaging with other fans via conventional means, going to games, and so on. Being a stan, however, has a specifically social media angle to this behaviour. Many stans display similar characteristics and levels of engagement to fans, but the difference is that they interact with it far more via social media and through a number of unique characteristics. These include things like fan cams, gift sets, edits, and thirst posts. And in turn, it offers a different perspective of football to the one that we're perhaps used to. The reason I'm so invested in this, and the reason I'm actually making this video in the first place, is because it has allowed me to find an interest in football. And this comes after years of being antagonistic towards it because I hadn't been able to find a way to enjoy it that I actually enjoyed. And that's really what makes this whole cultural shift so interesting, because stan culture has previously come from places averse to football culture and its stereotypical values. It was forged in the early 2010s with the likes of Beliebers, Directioners, the Bayhive, and Swifties, and unsurprisingly this has given it a more feminine and queer image. Today, however, stan culture is not unique to just music and can be found in just about all types of media and entertainment. What's significant then is that football, previously the epitome of hegemonic masculinity, something which rejects femininity and queerness, is losing those walls that previously kept non-masculine communities out. Now, of course, people who don't subscribe to hegemonic masculine ideals have been fans of football for no doubt as long as the sport has existed, plus a huge amount of effort has gone into detoxifying football culture in recent years, making it more open, accepting, and acknowledging of problems like racism and mental health. But there hasn't really been a place for more feminine and more queer expressions of love for football until very recently. And the reason that I use those terms of feminine and queer is because, as people wishing to enjoy football via stan behaviours have found the space to do that, they have in turn imported those aspects of stan culture. So what do those elements actually look like? Well, I don't think there's any better way of illustrating it than by actually having a look at some stan posts. I'm going to start on TikTok, just because that's where I got the inspiration for this video, and also because it's very, very active. To warm us up, I've already gone out and found a few just to kind of get those who are not in the know on this. I love this one so much, honestly. I mean, in another life, I think I would be a wag. After this year, okay, this one. Yes, exactly. That's the culture. This sort of like culture of ownership, or just wanting to be owned or controlled by them, I think is a reflection of the fact that people get obsessed with stans, okay? When you're in the thick of being a stan of something, you are pretty obsessed with them, okay? So the concept of ownership, I think, is quite alluring and attractive, hence this example.
Jesus, this my boy. It's not my boy.
A long way from pre-K and eating Lunchables. I just took your life, and as you know, it's
Reece James.
When you up the Smith,
God,
you
it's
should
so
never
fair.
feel uncomfortable.
I didn't realise, right, I wasn't out during the 2018 World Cup as bisexual, and I didn't realise for some time after why I was quite obsessed with a lot of the players. I was like, I'm really interested in this, more than I've ever been. Obviously, we were doing well, like, you know, that's kind of part of it, but I was like, Harry Maguire, now, of course, I'm much more open about this. So that should kind of give you an overview of kind of what to expect if you were to take a little browse on TikTok in this sort of area. What we're now going to do is have a little little peek under the bonnet, eh? You'll see there some of my many searches that have been used for research purposes only. England team edits, that's probably a good place to start. Love is a word. This is so beautiful. Wow. And you'll notice there are some themes here. Grealish. People really like Jack Grealish. He comes up a lot. Mason Mount too. There's a lot. When I say this man owns me, correct. Let's be honest. Look at these comments. I choked on my wart. We'll find some more Mason Mount stuff later, and you'll see why. Let's go have a look at some Declan Rice edits, because this is just, wow, okay, he looks so good, like, what the hell, love him. Sis, me too. Let's do one more before we move on, just because, you know, he is king. Oh, look at this. How lovely. You know, it's giving me some... people also search for Declan Rice coming out gay. Sis, it's not it. It's not it. 3 England players I'd like to have a sleepover with.
Bill Nye the Science Guy, Michael Jackson,
yes.
Bill Nye the Science Guy, Michael Jackson, Bill Nye the Science Guy, Michael Jackson, and probably Stevie Wonder. 3 celebrities I would like to have.
No, you can't just... You can't put the picture of Marcus Rashford with the bit in the audio that says Stevie Wonder. You cannot do that. So I think that kind of gives you an idea of the TikTok side of things. And the great thing is that because some of the content is just the same stuff over and over again, you can sit there forever and scroll through. I don't want to keep going that and waste your time. Let's go on to Tumblr. Here is our lovely boy Harry Maguire just on my feed. Look how cozy he looks, right? This is perfect actually, because we're going to get a very good taste for what to expect. Three Mason Mount posts. This site is obsessed with Mason Mount. We'll find some good England team content in just a second. We should just acknowledge, however, though, before we do that, how prevalent and how popular fan fiction, imagines, and POVs are. If you have no idea what those words are, don't worry. Just, you don't necessarily have to know unless you want to go and start reading them. I might have a little look at this one, because this just looks disgusting. Sleepy sneezes with Mason Mount. When you take care of Paulie Mason in light of our boy missing the match this week. Mason snored softly into your chest as you fanned the soup in front of... What? You fanned the... Are you... How are you... You got soup in front of you and Mason's in front of you too. Mason's ill. What do we do? What do we do? Well... No! I do think we should just acknowledge, however, and I'm not sure how much I'm going to be allowed to show of this. When I was doing some preliminary stuff, I did have a search... just for this term. We'll see in a minute. There's the word. This is the other side of Tumblr. Like... Ooh. Oh. 5,000 words of smut! Yeah, we're not going to read any of these for the sake of my eyes. And for the sake of your eyes too. Oh, look. Oh, look. Now, I know that every single one of these posts is just going to be about this fucking Christmas advert. Like, I believe the phrase is, it's snowing. Oh, yeah, look at him. Yeah.
Oh, don't be so boring.
This is...
I'm busy.
Come on, girls. It's snowing.
It's snowing.
Oh, it's snowing.
How many takes did they get for him with whatever paycheck he got from that? Like... Oh, it's snowing! This is a really good example of a very, very typical kind of post on football Tumblr. It's a gift set. Everyone has a gift set. Let's see what people have said about this. Oh, this motherfucker's so fucking hot, I have no words. The third gif is giving me cocky vibes. Yeah, me too. Me too. He looks so good. Sir, rail me. Not even going to acknowledge the pregnancy gifts, good lord. Oh, this is so good. This is like... I watched this live. Can you... I watched this goal live. That is a statement, frankly. People, you know, I've come a long way, right? Oh, it's such a good celebration. Like, oh, his thighs. I'm sorry, I've been caught doing it again. Can't keep fucking simping like this. It's just like, I'm trying to make a very serious, well not serious, but like semi-serious video, and I'm just sitting here being like, sorry guys, I really am. Oh man. Oh man. Oh, there's a lot to take in here. I don't know whether to be disgusted or proud. I would agree with that statement. This is headcanons. I've never quite got the appeal with headcanons, and yet I always fucking read them. Basically, just, it's like imagining what one of them would do. You know, travelling England squad headcanons, my exhausted brain's just thought of. Harry Maguire won't let anyone carry his bags for him because he doesn't want to be a bother. He'll have his boarding pass and passport ready to pull out whenever he needed, but will never just carry it in case he gets lost. Mild dad on holiday vibes, definitely. He'll barely speak on the plane, doesn't mind just being sat next to Jordan Pickford because he's learned to tune his voice out. See, this is the thing, right? People are picking out elements of football players that I don't think current football culture quite picks up on. Fans definitely joke about like how players behave and their kind of characteristics and stuff, but this is a different way of doing it. Harry Kane, never late but also never quite on time, but nobody says anything because he's never the last one there. Jack Grealish gets upset when Ben and Declan fight over sitting next to Mason because Chile is supposed to be his bestie, so he goes in a huff. And so, like, Hendo has this... They're living an entirely imagined life in this person's head, and everyone else's head for that matter. Oh, hello. There he is. Greelo! Right, I think that concludes our search into this. Let's get back to the main video. That is quite enough of that for one day. So, what can be drawn from this new way of engaging with football? Well, I think I've ascertained 3 main reasons why this change is happening. The first is to do with the wider cultural shift of how fans of something express being a fan. This is particularly seen with Gen Z. As they've grown up seeing and being a part of stan culture, it's therefore become one of the main ways of engaging with and showing your love for something. Social media is key to this, and many people discover stan culture by coming across it on social media platforms. As a way of engaging with something and sharing that love for it, stan culture is made possible by the features of many social media sites, and the way that you interact with content and other users. What has almost certainly helped fuel this is that football has become very social media savvy, with all sorts of different content on different platforms. Almost all of the major domestic and national football teams in the UK have a colossal YouTube presence, with many of the series they run giving players the space to be more than just football players. The individual profiles that teams and players have on other platforms further make them accessible to engage with. Sport as a whole has embraced social media as a form of promotion, interaction, and as a way to expand the kinds of content that it can produce. And a lot of football fans engage with the sport via social media nowadays anyway. But it's the fact that for Gen Z and for millennials, stan culture has become a cultural standard. It's one of the main ways that they interpret how to engage with something that they like. The ways that football stans interact with and show their love for football is therefore benefited by the fact that it is now a cultural standard, and because stan culture is enabled by social media. The second reason is the current cultural image of football. It is moving away from being a toxic and exclusionary environment. I'm only able to speak about this from a UK perspective, but the change happening here is also being seen across the football world. Initiatives that have sought to root out racism in the sport, make it more inclusive for queer people, and use its platform to address male mental health issues are seeing success. And while there is still a long way to go, we now have a generation of footballers coming into their prime who represent these values. Nowhere is this better represented than in the current England team, who are a world away from the gabble of unlikable personalities found in the lineup even just 10 years ago. Now they're a bunch of model sport personalities who are changing the very idea of what a football player can be. They are campaigners, internet personalities, models even, all the while being incredible athletes in their own right and playing together better than any England team has in generations. Best of all, we know these initiatives are working, that the change that these players represent is having an impact because old white men rabble on about it in their stuffy newspaper columns and on the hell that is Twitter. We also know that change is happening because people once outcast from football fandoms feel confident enough to participate. Please go and read the article by Shaista Aziz that I've put on the screen. It is one of the many incredible pieces that were written during the Euros, and it captures exactly what I'm talking about. I place almost all the reason that I'm actually enjoying football for the first time in my life on these men. They are just so selfless in their conviction, and they stand up for what they believe in with no conditions attached. By rejecting the toxic culture that has restricted inclusion in football, more and more male players are now representing a modern, positive version of masculinity, which, rather unsurprisingly, has made room for stan culture to exist within football fandoms. The third reason is to do with the safe spaces offered by places like Tumblr, TikTok, and to some extent Twitter that allow stans to congregate. Football Twitter, as an example of a prominent area of the football community, is not seen as being as inclusive of women and of queer people, so engaging with football outside of this culture feels safer. These other spaces can engage with football independent of the more typical sources of its culture. While the classic spaces and groups related to football are certainly way safer than they once were, there's still a lot of confidence required for fans who are not straight white men to go and be in those spaces. So being able to engage with the sport outside of this offers huge potential for new audiences to come in. Fandoms and standoms have thrived precisely because of the spaces that TikTok, Tumblr, and Twitter have been able to foster. They easily allow you to connect with other fans who want to interact with something in the way that you do. More than anything else related to this reason, these spaces offer a whole new amount of self-expression related to football. As I noted with the first reason that we looked at, the social media presence of the sport allows it to engage with stan culture. But what this also does is provide a wealth of content to populate these communities. The platforms they exist on offer tons of tools to then further express that. These tools allow people to share their love for football in their own way, which has really been the backbone of stan culture in general and why it has become so prevalent. With the powers that social media algorithms and their communication tools offer to connect to these people, you no longer have to listen to commentators giving their opinionated analysis about Harry Maguire's goal celebration to be a part of a football fan community. Nor do you even have to interact with more typical football fans because these spaces exist outside of where they engage with football. The question, of course, though, is what does this actually all mean for football in general? In the grand scheme, not that much at the moment. It's still too small to be having a wider impact on football culture in general. The small scale of these communities mean that the changes they are making are more in tandem with the cultural shifts that football is seeing, as opposed to being the driver of them. And at the end of the day, the majority of fans are still more typically in those traditional fan demographics. But it does prove that football's efforts to change its image are working, as people who haven't felt safe to engage with it before are feeling safe enough to do so now. And with the social media presence of football unlikely to get any smaller, stan culture will only grow in popularity as a way to be a football fan. But can we at least ask whether or not this is a positive thing for football? Well, it is and it isn't. Players already have a lot to deal with from fans, commentators, and the culture in general, and this only adds to it. Stan culture has a history of becoming toxic when it gets out of hand, including promoting hate for those not part of the fandom or for those who criticize the subject of that fandom, as well as unnecessarily sexualizing people, harassing them on social media, assuming their sexuality, and encouraging stans to form parasocial relationships with those people. As an example, the way that shipping can lead to perfectly normal behaviors being interpreted as meaning someone is queer in order to fulfill someone's desire to pretend that their favorite players are having a passionate homoerotic love affair is not healthy. Yes, I know these people are showing off their bodies whenever they play, and that plays into the wider spectacle of ogling at athletes, but it doesn't give you a free pass to write smut stories. While this side of stan behaviour can be well intended, little consideration is actually given to how the subjects of all this might interpret it. But at the same time, there is also a huge amount of positivity that is coming from stan culture embracing football. Whole new demographics of people feel able to enjoy the sport for essentially the first time in history, and they're doing it in ways that reflect the positive changes to masculine ideals that modern football is pioneering. It also nurtures players' abilities to express themselves as more than just footballers, because stan culture embraces all aspects of a person's life, and not just their profession. Comments about footballers just sticking to football no longer have any relevance when fans want footballers to be more than just footballers. And if any of the content that we have looked at goes to prove anything, it's that players expressing themselves as more than just footballers only increases the interest in the football that they play. That sadly means it will almost certainly be capitalized on by marketing soon enough, enough, and the wide presence on social media that football already has will make this an easy move down the line. But in the meantime, it allows these new fans to determine what they want to take from the sport, which inevitably will continue to change what football will evolve into. So that's an exploration into the standification of football. While it isn't the driving force behind the cultural shifts that we're seeing in football at the moment, it is a byproduct of the impact that those changes are having, and it's helping to redefine what counts as a football fan. The content and communities being created around this are able to flourish thanks to the safe spaces created by TikTok, Tumblr, and to some extent Twitter, and it's allowing for a whole new level of expression of being a football fan to develop. There are risks of what this might lead to down the line, with the toxic elements of stan culture seemingly never being too far behind, and this won't help in adding to the pressure that players are already under if and when this does become more visible. Those who participate in it, including myself, therefore have a duty to nurture the positive elements of it, keeping the ogling and simping to respectful levels, and to help it become a wider part of the football community. A lot of that community are currently unaware that this side of things even exists, so perhaps this is something to revisit down the line if and when it does become more visible. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I've had an absolute blast making it because I wanted to talk about this thing for so goddamn long. And one of the big reasons I actually made it was because I couldn't find another sort of video like this or other creators kind of having these same sort of conversations. So if you know anyone else who's made a video on this subject in a similar kind of manner, or who's talking about football in this way, link them to me in the comments. I want to hear about them. I want to be part of the conversation, and I want to hear what they have to say, you know what I mean? I should point out that the lack of women's football in this video is deliberate. I just don't have enough knowledge of women's football or the culture and fans around it to be able to speak professionally on it, so it would not be fair or right of me to do that. And I really want to focus in on the masculine elements anyway, because it's something that really means a lot to me and has been kind of the biggest source, really, the biggest reason that I've not been able to engage with football in the way I've wanted to before. And if you want to go and check out a full cut of that deep dive into those Tumblr and TikTok posts, then the link is in the description. I had a lot of fun making that bit in particular, and you know, thank you so much for watching this video, guys. It's been a very different, very new kind of take for me, so it's been very exciting to make. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one.